Welcome back to another torch review. I have the S1 Mini Baton in for testing today, and this was sent in via Olight for a review. This is the brand new updated model of the S Mini Baton, which I previously reviewed earlier in the year. You can see I'm looking at the HCRI version, which means the high CRI, high color rendering index that stands for, but this is still a cooled white or thereabouts around 5,500 kelvins, so bear that in mind. Also, looking at the box here, you'll be able to see some of the specs. Just bear in mind that the version I'm looking at is 450 lumens as opposed to the non-high CRI version, which is around about the 600 lumens. They're also using different LEDs. Now, coming on to the accessories, you get a micro USB cable included, and we have the wrist strap, standard Olight one, pretty good quality. I've taken the metal pin off, but there was one on the tip just to help guide it through. Now, taking a look at the torch, you'll be able to see the design looks quite similar to the previous model, but there are some differences. The knurling on the body, for example, is recessed. You've got a different pattern on that, and you also have that double clip, which has been featuring on some of the more recent Olight torches too. There are some other differences which we'll get into a bit later on. Now we'll unscrew the base cap. You'll notice that the clip does contact that. There's probably one reason that they changed the knurling design, so there's not too much friction, but by making the clip a bit longer it is connecting with the base cap, but perhaps would have just gone with a slightly shorter clip. This is the battery, which looks similar to the normal Olight CR123A, but it has the micro USB port for charging. We'll do a test on that later on. And there's your spring inside. You'll notice that this is inserted with the positive terminal up and then screwed back on the base cap. Like I said, I'm not too fussed about the clip contacting that, but that is a small point to note. Also, the button design has changed a bit. They've now put an LED on that. And this is a closer look at the clip. Quite handy design because you can, without taking it off, just use it both ways, and you can't really take it off on this to turn it around because it only really attaches one direction, just like the previous one. Now we have an XPG3 for this particular model, and you'll notice that the optical lens is quite a bit different to the other Olight ones that I've looked at. I'll do a close-up with some other torches just to show you that. So we have a different beam pattern on this. Now onto the operation, very much the same as the previous Olight model, single press on and off, and you push and hold to cycle through the power modes. You also have the mode memory as well, pretty much standard. To get into the moonlight mode, you have to just hold it on for about a second, it goes into that, but if you hold it longer, you go into the lockout mode, and you'll see that the LED glows red when it's in lockout. So just push again, long press to go out of the lockout mode. Turbo, double press, anytime, any power level, and that includes off. So I decided to put the turbo mode out of the main three power settings, and strobe is a triple press. The UI is pretty well sorted on these Olights and has been for quite some time, so really I have no complaints at all with the UI on this. You also have the auto off timer, double press and hold when it's on, and you can have the 3 or the 9-minute setting. Don't really use that much myself, but it's an optional feature. Just comparing it to the previous model, you'll be able to see there's quite a few similarities, but there are some differences. Apart from the fact that the original one didn't come in anything other than special editions, you can see the design on the clip has changed. So instead of the single clip, we have the double clip, the knurling on the body, and believe it or not, the new version, the S1 Mini, is slightly smaller. Not much in it, just over 1 millimeter perhaps, but that is certainly a difference between the two, which is quite impressive. They've managed to make it even smaller because it was quite a tiny torch anyway. It's just showing the differences between the optical lenses, so we'll have a look at those later on to see what the difference in beam shot is. And we didn't get a magnet in the previous version in the base cap, which is something that I'm quite pleased to see with this. So Olight have definitely been making some improvements to this in subtle ways, but overall it adds up to a more interesting product. Compare it to the Claris, which I did a review on recently. It's a completely different type of torch. You can see the optical lens on the Claris is a very big beam pattern, very wide and spread out. Completely different beam pattern to most of the torches, and I have the 3 of them lined up here. So we're going to do some beam shots with these later on. In terms of size, the new S1 Mini is the smallest out of all of them. Now a quick look at the user manual. And you'll be able to see here, that's the specs for the non-high CRI version. So the spacing's slightly different on some of the modes, and we get to the one that we're on today with the 450 lumens max. So just bear that in mind, that the output is a little bit different, and this covers the user operation, which I've gone through previously. We'll also do some tests on the battery and see how that fares. And this takes you through the standard operation, changing the brightness, moonlight mode. You can pause that if you wish, just to go over anything in case I've missed anything. It's always worth having a look through the manual. They're usually pretty good on the Olights. I found them quite clear and easy to understand. Now, waterproof test, no problems at all with this, as you would expect. And testing the magnet, it's pretty strong. It's not as strong as the Clarus. On flat surfaces, it finds plenty of grip. The only issue that I would find is on tubular surfaces, metal surfaces. Sometimes it can slip down on smooth ones, unless there's something holding it up. There's a ridge there which will stop it falling down. Not a big issue, but might have increased the magnet strength just a touch. But for most purposes, it will do the job quite nicely. This is the low battery warning that comes on, but you'll notice it kicks down in power anyway. That's an improvement over the previous one. And the charging speed, 330 milliamps. Once it's finished, turns from red to green, and I tested the termination at 4.19. Capacity of the cell came in at 659 milliamp hours. Now, this is a quick look at the tints between the three. I've got the S1 on the left, the neutral white S Mini in the middle, and the cooled white on the right. So you see it's quite a bit of a difference with the tints on these. The new one would definitely be quite neutral, whereas the cooled white would be more a slight green tint to that. And starting off with the new torch, you'll be able to see that the beam pattern has changed a bit on this. It's a bit more spread out in the central area, sort of a larger spot, a bit more flood. And I'm going through some different versions of torches. This is the cooled white S Mini. You can see that the power will be slightly higher than the one that I'm looking at today, the S1 Mini. And then onto the neutral white. So quite a few differences between these torches, and I've got some other ones which I'm going to put in as well, so you'll be able to look and see the differences, including the Clarus, which is here. And I'll move it around a bit so you'll be able to see just how big the beam spread is on this. The downside with the Clarus is it basically doesn't have any real range. It's not well suited to anything that you want range with, but it could be useful for close-up or camping. If you're a mechanic like that under the bonnet, it'd be quite a useful torch for that, but it doesn't really have that throw that some of the other torches have. So what I'll do is carry on with the beam shots and then come back with some thoughts at the end. Just a quick note on the new optical lens. This seems to give a bit more spread than the previous version, but I was quite pleased with the range on it, particularly when you compare it to the Claris, which really doesn't have that much range. So I think an improvement possibly in that regard. Onto the tint, this isn't that cool and it's not that warm, it's somewhere in between. I'm not unhappy with it. I haven't compared it to the other version, the non-high CRI. And the idea with this is that you'll get more realistic colours, and you do when you're visually looking at it, compared to a cool white tint. So I don't think most people will be unhappy. Saying that, some might like to have a neutral white choice. Really only small points for me on this: the clip contacts, the base tail cap. Not a huge issue. They've made the clip a bit longer so it goes a bit deeper. It wouldn't have bothered me if they had made it a bit shorter and it didn't contact it. Just a very minor point to make. This model is really about refinements and small changes, and they've done quite a lot. You now get a wrist strap, which you didn't get before. You also get a rechargeable battery. You don't need a charger, just use the micro USB port, versus the previous model which had the disposable battery. And you also have slightly smaller size. They've added the LED onto the lockout and the low battery warning. And another change is that extra power level, which is really quite useful. Before you had to go up to the top setting, let it drop down. Now you can just select the setting in between, so you have that extra power level too. And they've put the turbo, separate the turbo out of the main settings as well. So I'm pretty happy overall with this. Certainly one of the nicest pocket torches that I've used to date. But let me know what you think. Would you be interested in this torch, or in any areas that you might have changed in the design? So thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out some of my other torch reviews, and I will catch up with you shortly.